Thank you. Just a short word on the Irish Green Building Council and what we do. We're part of a global network of over 100 green building councils around the world with over 27,000 members. So we're made up of the broadest range of industry stakeholders, everybody from universities, manufacturers, building owners, contractors, etc. So I heard somebody say earlier that Property Industry Ireland was the only group representing the broad construction and property sector. We do also, but from a sustainability point of view. We were set up, as Raoul said, we were set up in 2011, and there's three key strands to what we do. And these are represented by these three projects that we're currently either working on or collaborating on. So, for example, QualiBuild is a project to upskill our construction workers to understand what quality sustainable construction is. So this is about teaching this is about providing training to construction workers to understand that, you know, a proper approach on site, that every trade is involved in creating a quality building. The second project, the Home Quality Rating, is looking to address many of the concerns of Robin. How do we rate the overall holistic approach to sustainability? And finally, I'm going to be talking today about the Build Upon project, about developing a national renovation strategy for Ireland. Just a brief note on the Home Quality Rating. We're currently piloting this in a number of developments, and this is about measuring a whole series of indicators that contribute to an overall rating. So if we look at, there's 5 different categories, so we're measuring indicators across 5 categories, including sustainable location, how you access the site, public transport, walking routes, cycle routes, etc. Economic looks at life cycle costs. Things like flexibility, have you built in flexibility? Can that building be converted, can that apartment be converted in future for lifetime housing, or for, can it be converted, say, to a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment? So can it adapt with the family? The environmental provides indicators on water, on embodied carbon, on density, things like land density and efficient use of land. And then, of course, health and well-being is critical to quality construction: good ventilation, good acoustics, good daylighting. So we're providing a set of indicators that we hope to roll out for the most progressive developers. But I suppose mostly the key thing about construction over the next 35 years, if you're working, if you want to build brand new buildings, brand new tower blocks, go to India, go to South America, go to Asia. If you want to stay in Europe, just get used to the fact that most of what you'll be doing is retrofit. I mean, a stark statistic is that in India, about 90% of their building stock in 2050 has yet to be built. In Europe, it's the opposite. 90% of what we have, we'll still have in 2050. And it's how we deal with that stock that matters. So currently, we've been looking at renovation very much in terms of a short-term perspective. You're familiar with the energy efficiency directives from Europe, which require a 20-20-20. They're looking at a 20% reduction in energy. But if Europe is setting the agenda here, in that it's looking to the longer term of an 80% reduction by 2050, and we hope to see those targets bound into an international agreement in Paris in December. But the only part of the Energy Efficiency Directive that actually looks at the long-term perspective is Article 4. And this one is trying to encourage governments to look well beyond 2050, well beyond 2020, to look at the long-term deep energy renovation. So it's asked every government to come up with a strategy on how they're going to achieve that, how they're going to stimulate investment that carries on to 2050 to renovate the entire building stock. Now, they had to submit those plans in April 2014. Now, that was only 18 months after the directive came into effect, so most governments didn't have time to put those strategies, or didn't have time to properly think through those strategies. But we get a second bite of the cherry, because every government now has to submit their second version by the 30th of April 2017. Now, part of this strategy was the whole energy efficiency directive was conceived during the economic crash when Europe was on its knees. Construction employment was hammered. So part of the energy efficiency directive is about growing the economy of Europe again, growing construction jobs. And Europe recognized, the European Commission recognized that energy efficiency improvement generates all these good things. It grows government's budgets because it creates employment, it brings back money into the Department of Finance's budget. It improves health and well-being, so it cuts waiting lists for chronic respiratory diseases in our A&E. So it delivers all of these multiple benefits. Now, the World Green Building Council, the European network, has really put its arms around this particular article, because we see this as a key part of both delivering our climate change strategy, but it's a win-win for everybody in improving the quality of our built environment. So we ran a short campaign of videos from leading personalities, including Pat Rabbit down here in the corner, which is on the World Green Building Council website, on what a renovation roadmap should look like, what a renovation strategy should look like. We held a workshop in January 2014, about 2 months before the strategy had to be delivered, but that was too short notice to actually do anything meaningful. But we had a chance to have 3 short workshops on commercial buildings, on public buildings, and on residential. And I suppose the key things, we were able to highlight what were the key factors in each of those areas. I mean, we've talked a lot about residential because we're all familiar, we all live in houses, so we partially know what needs to be done there. In the commercial sector, it's more complicated. For starters, generally building owners in the commercial sector will only look at much shorter payback times of about 3 years. There are also, if you're looking at an office building, the energy costs of an entire office business are about 1%, as opposed to 90% for staff and wages. So if you go into the chief financial officer and start talking about energy efficiency, he'll probably chuck you out because he'll have no interest. It makes very little difference to his bottom line. However, if you go in and talk to the chief financial officer about how energy efficiency is going to improve the productivity of his staff, now you might be on a winner. So there's a couple of these things that we highlighted that we wanted to explore further in developing a proper strategy. The public sector is quite difficult also. The public sector is very challenged in terms of the skills required to procure energy contracting services. So they need to be upskilled in how to procure that type of service. The Building Performance Institute of Europe carried out an analysis of all the workshops, of all of the strategies and roadmaps submitted by the European governments, and they found most of them sadly deficient in terms of delivering the ambition that was required from the government and the intent, which was about the co-benefits of creating employment, improving the quality of buildings for Europe's citizens. So we put together with 12 other green building councils a proposal under Horizon 2020 to help our governments deliver that strategy. And so I'll just give a brief outline. I thought we had I'm just going to show a short video here. Sorry for that technical hiccup. It doesn't look like we can show the videos. It's a little bit complicated. Well, anyway, to get back to the project that we've developed, it's very much about trying to make retrofit a far more interesting proposition, trying to get far more stakeholders involved in developing the strategies for government. It's really about demonstrating to owners and occupiers that renovation is about improving the quality of life for all of Europe's citizens. So the project has 4 phases. Phase 1, we're currently mapping the whole system, what policies are already in place, because this is about seeing what is already there, because quite a lot of times when people sit down to develop a strategy, they start to try and reinvent the wheel. Phase 2 is about developing a very interesting collaborative platform for all of these stakeholders to come together to develop a new strategy. Phase 3 is actually implementing it in the second half of this 2-year program, and Phase 4 is the innovation incubator. Apologies, what's on the screen isn't what's showing up on your screen. So at the moment what we're doing is we're actually mapping all the stakeholders who should be involved, and they're not, a lot of the stakeholders that attended the workshop in Dublin Castle or who didn't attend the workshop in Dublin Castle are the ones we need to be there. So that includes everybody from the banks to estate agents to civil society groups, because the key people who influence retrofit are the people who own the buildings. So they're the decision makers, they're the household, the key decision maker in a household, whether it's the husband or the wife or whoever. They have to be influenced to do it. In the businesses, it's not the sustainability officer, it's the chief financial officer who's going to make a decision on whether to invest in renovation. So you need those people there. So, for example, this funny looking constellation of stars here represents what we think are the national stakeholders. If you look very closely, you would see the actual names, but each dot represents a scale of influence, represents a different type of stakeholder, whether it's public sector or what we call an unusual suspect. Now, some of the unusual suspects are people like the Country Women's Association, who are very influential in creating change. People like the clubs, churches, they can influence change in ways that many of the people who attend conferences like this can't. So we're looking very broadly at who we really need to have in that room. Our next thing that we've started is we need all those stakeholders to understand how policy is created, because we want them to be useful when we get them there. We don't want them bringing their own agenda and saying, why can't we do this, when it's already been implemented somewhere else. So we want to make it very simple for them to engage in policy by giving them a Reno Wiki. So if they're interested in behavioural change, we will have highlighted all of the different behavioural change for renovation that have happened around Europe. We'll be prioritising them by the most successful ones, so that everybody coming to these workshops will understand what works and what doesn't work before they sit down together. So it's very much designed for busy professionals and not for policy wonks, because we want those busy professionals involved in making that policy. The next thing, having identified all of the best policies from around Europe, and some of them may already exist within Ireland, and there'll be other countries who will want to see what we're doing here. We will identify those experts, we'll bring them over here. If there's a particularly good strategy that's working, say, and I'm going to give you an example now, and unfortunately I can't show this very inspiring film, but we want to bring them over and see if that'll work in Ireland. So for example, we at our conference 2 weeks ago, the Green Room, we had somebody over talking about Energy Sprong. Energy Sprong is a highly innovative collaboration between the Dutch government and key industry stakeholders in Holland, where they have developed a system. They were given the target to develop renovation that could be carried out in 1 day to zero energy. So these houses have zero energy bills. It has to be carried out, and remember I said again, in 1 day. So it took them a series of iterations to develop this. They started off, they hit 5 days, and it took them several months to do that. It's fully pre-manufactured retrofit. The owner doesn't need to move on. It doesn't even need to move out. They give him a city break. He goes down to Paris for the weekend, and he comes back to a fully retrofitted house with zero bills. It's this type of innovation that we want to inspire, but it's not simple to do. I mean, initially these were costing about 100,000 per house. They've got it down to about 60,000, and with economies of scale, we'll bring it down even further. And this has been done at scale. They intend to do up to 100,000 next year. And I would show you the film if we could. Unfortunately, I can't. It'll be on our website, though. So what we want to do is inspire people to come up with the solutions to retrofit. If you take a housing estate like that, there's a whole, you've got a pattern book of houses. You can come up with a solution to retrofit those at scale, rather than doing this messy thing of a man in a van rolling up with a set of rolls of insulation. We're talking about large companies coming together and offering a one-stop shop, a one-day retrofit. How can we deal with this type of house? What about this type of house? I'm not suggesting we're going to cover those in a... Is there another solution for those that can be done at scale? So the next part is of the process is working with governments and stakeholders to design. So we'll be developing a whole series of events over the second year, and this is fully backed by the Department of Energy. So the work from these workshops will feed directly into version 2 of the strategy. There will be 88 workshops all across Europe. There'll be at least 6 or 7 in in Ireland, across the country. And there'll be two or three national, international workshops. We're leading this work package on developing the actual workshops themselves. Sorry, apologies, I keep looking at the screen and something else happening up here. And finally, we'll be reporting back from those workshops directly into version 2 of the roadmaps. And lastly, we're developing an innovation incubator. This project doesn't end after 2 years. It's designed to continue on into the future. We will be developing a whole series of innovative concepts around financial innovation, business model innovation, public sector innovation and behavioural innovation that we will take forward for the version 3 roadmaps. Because this is all about developing an iterative process of improving and developing the national renovation roadmaps to achieve our 2050 targets. So we need you to be part of the process, so I'd ask you to go to www.igbc.ie to follow the Build Upon project. There will be a website. There will be workshops next year in 2016. Sign up for the newsletter and you'll get further information on those. Thank you very much. Apologies for the technical hiccups.